Hi, it's Chris from Epix here. This is an introductory video to our projects module. So this is going to be all about how to get a project into the system and then how to create the jobs that hang off a project. We'll also be covering off the various scenarios that you might want to use this particular module for, bearing in mind of course that all organisations are different and you all may interpret a project differently. That said, a project within our system is essentially the same thing, regardless of how you interpret it. What we have is a single project job, which is the description of the project, and that could be something such as an extension to a house. It could be a new build of a building on a school, for example. Or it could just simply be a new project to install some air conditioning or refrigeration equipment into a premises. So you have the overall project, and then underneath that we have a series of jobs, which are essentially just normal jobs in the same way that you would create a job in the system. So normally you would do the creating a job here, create a simple job, and the jobs that are created here using this screen, the manual job entry, are the same things that are part of the project job, and they are all linked together under the one umbrella of the project. The example I'm going to use today is going to be a project for our training client, which I'll just simply use as Epix Systems, and this is going to be for an extension to our office. So essentially the plan for the purposes of this demonstration is to extend our office into the unit next door. So I'm going to be setting up a project for that extension, and then underneath that I'll set up a series of project jobs, and I'll do them in a couple of different ways so you can see how you could manage a project using this system. Regardless of how you set up the jobs underneath the project, the actual act of creating the project is always the same. So in our demo system here we have the Create menu, and under there is the option for Project. And the overall project itself is created by filling out just a few fields here. Similar to the job entry screen, you have fields for customer, branch, site or asset, and of course those could be captioned ever so slightly differently in your systems, but essentially it's the same thing as the job entry screen, where you've got the property details here and the client at the top. So I'm going to begin by typing in the name of our training client, and from the site I've only got a couple of options, so I'm going to extend our offices here. And for the contract, it would make a lot of sense really to have a specific project contract, and that way it will separate the project and indeed some of the works that go on underneath it out from your day-to-day reactive or anything else that you're doing. So I'm going to select this projects here. So we're going to give our project a reference. Of course you could generate one using the generate new button, and that'll give it a CRN number as it does on the manual job entry screen. But this might make more sense for you to have an actual project reference of your own that's unique, and that you can then create job references off this, so you can all link everything together nicely under the same sort of project reference. So for the purposes of this one here, I'm going to call this just simply Epix 001, and as you can see this is unique, we haven't used it before. And the description of the project is the actual description of what the overall task is. So for this one, I'm just going to be fairly brief, but essentially so that people that are searching for this know what the project is, this describes what we're doing. The actual jobs that go underneath it will give the actual detail of what they're doing, but this is the description of what the overall project entails. You must provide a start date for the project, but the end date is optional because of course end could be completely open on certain projects. So the start date for the project, I'm just going to simply double click in there to select today. But if you're planning this for the future, of course we could choose a date using the date picker. I'm going to leave the end date open. And in terms of a project template, I'll cover this in another video, but essentially this allows you to set up templates to base your project on. And we'll cover that, as I say, in a separate video because it'll just be a little bit more in depth. So the basics are here. We've done our customer, we've done our site, and we've selected our contract. We've given our project a reference, and here is the description and a start date. So now we just simply press continue. And that now has created our project, as we can see there by the green bar across the top of the screen. The next thing to do on the project is to add some jobs to it. Now, adding jobs to a project can be done in two ways. The way I'm going to show you in this video today is adding them manually using this screen that you can see here. There'll be a separate video, and that is on how to import them from a spreadsheet template, and that can be really useful if you've got a project that you do many of and you have the same sorts of jobs every time you do it. Say you're doing a maybe re-roofing of a particular street at a time within a contract that you've got, you could import the jobs that you're going to do in bulk using a spreadsheet that you set up once, and then all you have to do is go into that and edit a few details before you upload it. It saves you doing it manually. But for purposes of today, we're going to fill in this screen ourselves for the jobs underneath the project. The first field that we have to complete is a unique field. This is the job number for the project job. So the reason I chose my own project reference is that I can now put that project reference in and then stick maybe a -01 at the end for the first job. And the first job is going to be clearance of the site and knock through into next door. Of course, you've got 255 characters to play with in this description, so you could provide more details here if you wish. Now, the contract again for this one, you could choose a specific contract that's relevant to the trade if that's how you set your contracts up. But because mine is divided into planned works, projects and so on, I'm just going to simply put this on the projects contract because I want it to be searchable, and all costs, if I do any financial reporting, would be showing on this particular contract as well. For the trade type, I'm going to go with this one here, a clearance trade. Of course, that could be anything that's suitable for that particular task that we're doing. The priority, again, same as you would do for any of your normal projects or jobs that you're doing, you would choose the most appropriate priority. So I'm just going to go with a planned works one. And here is where we can choose a target date. So when do you want this task finished? So this will be able to be seen within the target date or the required date on the job sheet. So very similar to how you would normally log a manual job, is that you're going to set here a date that you want this task done. So let's say, for example, I want this finished by the end of next week, for example. And the sequence order of the job is, in this case, number 1. This is the sequence that they appear in the jobs list against the project. So this will appear at the top of the list. I've already described this one, and there'll be a separate video on this, so we can ignore this for now. Down at the bottom here, we have got job lines. And the job lines are essentially the sales codes or SOR codes that exist for the contract that you've got in place here. So you can already at this point, like you can on the job entry screen, if you have that screen switched on, you can add sales codes to the project job as you create it if you need to. If you're not working to sales codes or SOR codes, then you don't need to do anything with this, but if you were, then you could use this to select the most appropriate SOR codes and add them and build those up here. Once you're done with the project job, you simply press Add Job. You'll notice the screen refreshed there, and you've got a little green bar to say the job was created. You've now got a table for the project details, and here we have project jobs listed, and our first one, which is the one we've just created, is now showing here. We are presented with the screen here again to add further jobs, so I shall now walk through and add some more jobs to this project. And the final few items listed here with the pencils allow us to edit certain aspects of the project. So the start date, the source referral in the care and repair world, the actual project itself, you can make changes to the project details, and it's possible to add messages to the project, or indeed you can edit the status. So currently the status of the overall project is awaiting allocation. You could use that to edit the status if you so wish. Scrolling down, we have our Reports tab, and basically anything underneath the Reports tab, if you click on it, the details that you click on will load here in this window. So for example, if I click on Project Details, you'll get a table for the details of the project. So what you're looking at here is the site the project's for, the description, what status it's at, relevant dates, and then as we scroll over to the right hand side you'll see the financials relating to the overall project. Of course you can see any telephone numbers for contact details if we'd added those in, and then any issued operatives, which of course at the moment we haven't got any because we haven't issued the job. The history will show you history on the project. Financial, if we click on that now, won't show us anything exciting right now because we haven't got any financials, we haven't actually recorded any work yet. I'll re-show this once we have, but essentially you'll show sales, costs, purchases and a profit summary as well. A bit like what we do on the job sheet, but what this is doing is this is bringing all the financials in from the jobs within the project to summarise them all in one place. So whilst we're talking about the jobs, if we click on the project jobs report, that loads up the list of jobs where you can then click into them, or you could directly issue them if you so wished. Of course there's the option for attachments and purchase orders and so on. I'll leave you to explore those as you create your own projects. So assuming I've finished adding jobs now, over on the top right hand side of our screen we can now press continue to move on. If however before we do we've noticed a mistake in one of the jobs, we can edit them by clicking here. But I'm going to move on, so I'm going to press continue. Now there is a step within this for adding activities, and then once again there will be a separate video on this because as I say this video is an introduction to the projects module and I want to show you how it can work for you in its simple state. But it is possible to add activities, so do see our linked video on that one. Clicking again on the top right hand side to continue, we can move on in the steps, and that has now created our project and all steps are complete for now. To step into our project sheet we simply click here, and that loads our project where you've got the navigation bar and reports options on the left here and the window where data is displayed. Of course our project has just been created so that there is not a great deal of information in it at the moment. There's just simply the project with some jobs, and as we can see it's currently at status awaiting allocation. If I press the home button now, take us back to our dashboard. I've added to my dashboard here the widget for project statuses, and if we click onto the 3 as awaiting allocation, what we should now see is the project we've just created here, so you can then step into there and take you back into the project sheet. So to briefly describe some of the options that are listed here under the processes menu item, issue allows you to issue all jobs in the project out at once. So unless you're going to give out all the jobs to a single subcontractor or a single tradesperson, then using that from the project sheet is probably not overly useful for you, but it is possible to issue all jobs at once. You can print the jobs, or rather a summary of the project, and from there you can choose what you want to show on your printout. And then of course once you've selected what you want to appear, you would press generate to produce that printout of the project. Clicking the add letter allows you to do a communications template, a bit like a mail merge letter. There is a separate video on how to do communications templates from jobs, so essentially the same thing applies here, it's just to a project. The invoice button will allow you to generate invoices for any ready to be charged jobs. Attachments allows you to add notes or indeed an attachment of any sort, a bit like you can from a normal job sheet, and this will be added to the project itself. So here you could type a note, or you could use this to browse for an attachment. And of course you've got the option to make these visible to the different people if you so wish. Hitting the archive button does the same as the archive button or the cancel button on a job sheet. It will archive the project, removing any financials, and it will just make it disappear from any of the searches that you might do for live project. Adding a purchase order allows you to add an order directly to the project, I'm not going to show you how to do that because it is largely very similar to doing it against a job, and the reason for that is I would always advocate adding your purchase orders to jobs specifically so that they will then show against the costs on the individual jobs within the project. For some of our customers who are charitable organisations, the record donation button is here to allow you to record donations that have been made to you. Let's say you've been visiting somebody who's then made a donation to your organisation, then you can do that by recording it here. And the final few items listed here with the pencils allow us to edit certain aspects of the project. So the start date, the source referral in the care and repair world, the actual project itself, you can make changes to the project details, and it's possible to add messages to the project, or indeed you can edit the status. So currently the status of the overall project is awaiting allocation. You could use that to edit the status if you so wish. Scrolling down, we have our reports tab, and basically anything underneath the reports tab, if you click on it, the details that you click on will load here in this window. So for example, if I click on project details, you'll get a table for the details of the project. So what you're looking at here is the site the project's for, the description, what status it's at, relevant dates, and then as we scroll over to the right hand side, you'll see the financials relating to the overall project. Of course, you can see any telephone numbers for contact details if we'd added those in, and then any issued operatives, which of course at the moment we haven't got any because we haven't issued the job. The history will show you history on the project. Financial, if we click on that now, won't show us anything exciting right now because we haven't got any financials, we haven't actually recorded any work yet. I'll re-show this once we have, but essentially you'll show sales, costs, purchases, and a profit summary as well. A bit like what we do on the job sheet, but what this is doing is this is bringing all the financials in from the jobs within the project to summarise them all in one place. So whilst we're talking about the jobs, if we click on the project jobs report, that loads up the list of jobs where you can then click into them, or you could directly issue them if you so wish. Of course, there's the option for attachments and purchase orders and so on. I'll leave you to explore those as you create your own project. Worth mentioning, of course, are project jobs. There are 5 of them, all linked to this project, and they're all sitting at awaiting allocation status. If I go back to our dashboard now, and I have a look in the status pot here for awaiting allocation, you can see there are 92 jobs in there. If I change one of the or two of the filters here to find our job, so let's say for example I do a search for the customer. This is the training client, and I want to show anything that's a project job. I press update filters. I'm expecting to see 5 results now, and that's our Epix 001-1 to 5. Of course we could sort those in order, sort them by date, and so on. But we can of course also find them in the project sheet by scrolling down and selecting project jobs, and there they are. And because those are just normal jobs, you can issue those and manage them exactly the same way that you do with a normal job. So let's click on this first one here. We select that one. Here we have a very normal job sheet. The only difference that you'll see to any sort of standard job that you might create using the normal create job button is that on the yellow bar here it tells us that this is part of that project, and as you can see the hand symbol appears as I hover over that. That means that we can click back on there to take us back into the project sheet. So all the buttons up here behave exactly the same way as they would do on a normal job. You can add attachments, you can issue the job, you can even split the job. And that's quite an important one because split jobs also feed into a project. So this particular job here is the clearance of the site and knocking through. Well, it could well be that you wouldn't issue that overall job to a single person. It could be given out to, say, a team, maybe a different subcontractor for the different aspects of work involved. Well, in that case, you could split the job, say, into 3, and then issue each of the works orders out to the individuals, and those, once they complete the works orders, will feed into this job, which will then feed into the project. So I've just split this job. I've split it into two. I've done one split here into the clearing of the office and moving all the furniture out into a storage location, and then the second part is knocking actual walls down into next door. So as we can see now on the job status, it's now showing as complete, and that's because the two work orders have now been carried out. So against this job we can see that there were costs on the first work order and costs on the second. So in our financial summary for the first job within the project, there are costs associated to it. If I now press onto the project link, of course if I scroll down and I view project jobs, the status of the first job is showing as complete along with the date that it was finished. If I click onto the financial report, we can now see that the project has incurred costs, and the cost summary is showing the costs against the work orders which rolled up into that job, which is now rolled up here into the overall project. The second job in our list for the building works, we click into there. It might be that of course you need to buy some materials for the building works. So you would click onto raise PO and you would be raising a purchase order for the building works job. So as we can see, I've just created a purchase order now. So this is a ordered value at the moment, it's not been delivered, and that's for the value of just shy of £2,500. I come out of this purchase order and I go back to our project sheet and I click on the orders button. We'll now see that the order that belongs to this second job here has now pulled through as a purchase order visible on the project sheet. And if we click on financial to reload the financials, you'll see here now under purchases that we have an ordered value matching that purchase order. As that purchase order is then delivered, let's record the delivery now. Date, and let's just say it was fully delivered as we ordered it. Press continue. We now go back into our project sheet, reload our financials. What we'll now see is a delivered value is now showing, and the same thing will happen once you record your supplier invoice. So the supplier invoice has now been recorded exactly as it was ordered, and now we can see on our financial summary, because the financial summary takes into account on this particular demo invoiced values, we're now showing total purchases here as well as part of our profit summary. So we can see at the moment this project has incurred some costs. That was the labour on the first visit, and we've also incurred costs of purchases that we bought for materials on the second job. Our second job, the building works, is now at status approved for charging. So if we step into this job, we'll see why. We scroll down here, we can see that the works were carried out over 3 days. There are now costs for materials, that's the purchase order. There's been costs for labour, which is the time spent on site here. And now we've also got a sales line, which is for our interim payments. So let's say you want to do phased payments on this project. You want to get some money back at this particular point and bill the client for £4,000 in this example. So this is now at approved for charging. So we could of course generate an invoice. This will now generate an invoice for the outstanding amount on this job, which was £4,000 net, and that's now generated our invoice. If we come out of here and we go back to our project sheet and we reload the project jobs widget, we can see this job is now charged. And if we reload the financial widget, we can now see that we've got sales values which have also increased our costs because we've had visits on the second job, but now our profits are showing a little bit more healthy because we've got a 15% profit due to the fact we've done a phased or interim invoice. So in the profit summary, the sales are pulling through from any sales lines at all on any of the jobs listed here. The costs pull through again the same, so any materials that engineers or operatives say they used on a job, those will pull through here. That will also show the labour as well, and it's broken down here too. And your purchases also pull through here as well. So any jobs that you have listed here and any split jobs that incur any costs or also generate any sales will pull through those values to the main project sheet. So for the purposes of the demo, I'm not going to show any more on the adding of items to jobs, because I think you've got the idea of it now. Essentially, add your sales lines, cost lines and purchases as you see fit to the project jobs, and they pull through here, so you can keep an eye on your project summaries on this screen here. Any questions at all on anything you've seen there, or if you would like to have a play around with this on your own system and you don't have the project option within your menus, then feel free to give us a shout and we can always set that up for you. And there is always the option of setting it up in your test system as well, so you're not impacting your live data. So do get in touch if you've got any queries at all. Thanks for watching.